From the wilderness of Kodiak Island, Alaska, this is Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier with your host, Robin Barefield. In a land full of peril and vicious animals, humans are the most dangerous predators of all.
When the Kotzebue police entered a bedroom in a house on the mayor's property on May 23, 2018, they found the lifeless body of 25-year-old Jennifer Kirk, curled at the foot of the bed. A rifle lay across her feet. She had strangulation marks on her neck and a bullet wound under her chin. Even before receiving the autopsy report, the Kotzebue police quickly ruled Kirk's death a suicide. 2 years later, the police were called to an adjacent house on the same property to examine the body of Susanna Norton. They could not so easily dismiss Susanna's death because the medical examiner ruled it a homicide. Someone had strangled Susanna to death. The deaths of Jennifer Kirk and Susanna Norton, both Inupiaq women, highlight the continuing issue of violence against Alaska Native women. Welcome to Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier. I'm your host, Robin Barefield, and I'm broadcasting to you from the heart of the Kodiak National Wildlife Refuge on Kodiak Island in Alaska. The Violence Policy Center lists Alaska as one of the most dangerous places in the United States for women. According to a 2020 University of Alaska Justice Center victimization survey, 60 out of every 100 women residing in Alaska have experienced intimate partner violence, sexual violence, or both. This is a 14.7% increase from a similar study conducted in 2015. A 2016 report by the Violence Policy Center ranked Alaska first nationwide as the state with the highest homicide rate per capita of female victims killed by male offenders. Alaska Native women are the most at-risk group to become victims of violent crimes. Alaska Natives comprise only 20% of the state's population, but Alaska Native women represent 54% of Alaska's sexual assault victims. Compared to all other women in the U.S., Alaska Native women are 10 times more likely to experience domestic violence. Alcohol and substance abuse contribute to these staggering statistics. According to the Alaska State Troopers, approximately 37% of all crimes they investigate annually involve alcohol and substance abuse, and drugs and alcohol contribute to 62% of all violent crimes. Alaska Native communities have the highest rates of family violence, suicide, and alcohol abuse in the United States. Rape in Alaska occurs at 3 times the national average, and the suicide rate is 4 times the national average. Law enforcement is minimal or non-existent in rural Alaska. The 3 major cities and all the large towns in Alaska support local police departments, but the Alaska State Troopers are responsible for patrolling most of the state. Approximately 300 troopers patrol a state 1/5 the size of the continental United States, leaving Alaska with 1 state trooper for every 1,000,000 acres of land. Also, 180,000 Alaskans cannot access a modern 911 system, and in the villages, there is no Amber Alert when a child goes missing. Even where the 911 system is operational, residents in many small villages must wait hours, if not a day or longer, for the troopers to respond to a violent situation. Due to the remoteness of many rural communities, the lack of roads, rugged terrain, changeable weather, and the high cost of air transportation, response by law enforcement to a critical situation requires time and resources. Kotzebue has a population of 3,100. It is 33 miles north of the Arctic Circle on Alaska's northwest coast. It has a police force, but the officers are not from Kotzebue. Some live elsewhere in Alaska, while others come from outside the state. The officers commute to Kotzebue for 2-week shifts and then fly home. This arrangement leaves the police less connected to the citizens of Kotzebue. However, it still does not explain why officers did so little to investigate the death of Jennifer Kirk and the murder of Susanna Norton. When Jennifer died, her boyfriend's father, Clement Richards Sr., had recently been elected the mayor of Kotzebue. Susanna Norton dated another one of Richards' sons, but at the time of her murder, voters had recently elected a new mayor in Kotzebue. Still, the ex-mayor and his wife remained influential in town, and they had close connections to the judges and prosecutors who tried cases in the region. In 2021, Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy created the State Council on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons. In 2022, the state hired investigators tasked with solving cases of missing and murdered Native women, but they have done little to investigate the deaths of Jennifer Kirk and Susanna Norton. The cycle of abuse in the Richards family began with the father, Clement Richards Sr. In May 1989, Clement and his wife, Annette, had 2 sons, and she was 8 months pregnant with her 3rd son when Clement Sr. kicked her in the stomach. According to the charges filed in Kotzebue State Superior Court, Annette was bleeding profusely from her genital area. The next day, she gave birth to her 3rd child, Anthony. Clement Sr. pleaded no contest to felony domestic violence assault and received a 6-month jail sentence. The felony conviction did not stop voters from electing him to the city council in 1999 or as the mayor of Kotzebue in 2015. Annette recovered and stayed with her husband. She took a job in the local office of the Alaska State Troopers, where she worked closely with prosecutors, including one who would later become the judge presiding over the domestic violence cases against her sons. In a report published by the Anchorage Daily News and ProPublica, the authors reviewed 31 criminal cases involving the 3 sons of Clement Sr. and Annette Richards. Between them, they have been charged with 16 counts of domestic violence, including 5 felonies. None of the charges have resulted in a felony domestic violence conviction. In 2014, a year before Clement Richards Sr. was elected mayor of Kotzebue, a woman filed a sexual assault case against Anthony Richards. Richards was initially held on $7,500 bail, but Superior Court Judge Paul Roteman reduced the bail to $2,500, despite the victim saying she was afraid of what Anthony would do to her if he got out of jail. The judge said, "I know Mrs. Richards from when she used to work for the troopers. She has a lot of experience with these types of cases and knows what these are like." A Kotzebue grand jury indicted Anthony Richards on felony charges of sexual assault and attempted sexual assault in the 2014 case. Still, the prosecutor allowed Richards to plead guilty to a single misdemeanor account of indecent exposure. He was not required to register as a sex offender. Judge Roteman told him, "To say that you dodged a bullet is probably an understatement on this one." Jennifer Kirk grew up in the village of Buckland, 75 miles southeast of Kotzebue. She and Anthony began dating and moved into one of the 2 homes on the property owned by Clement Sr. and Annette Richards. Their home was 1 block from the Kotzebue Police Department and City Hall. In December 2015, 1 month after Clement Richards Sr. was elected mayor of Kotzebue, Jennifer Kirk went to the local hospital seeking treatment for a beating. She told the police that Anthony Richards had punched her 5 times. Officer Nate LaCour went to the property to investigate the incident. When he knocked, an extremely intoxicated Clement Richards Sr. opened the door and shouted, "How can I help you?" 3 times before slamming the door in the officer's face. Anthony Richards was arrested for the abuse against Kirk, but was soon released on $100 bail. He again managed to avoid a felony conviction. After receiving minimal punishment for his bad acts, little deterred Anthony from continuing to drink excessively and beat his girlfriend. On March 14, 2017, Kirk reported that Anthony had strangled her, and she nearly passed out. According to Alaska law, he should have been charged with non-fatal strangulation. The state Congress enacted this law in 2005 because non-fatal strangulation is often a precursor to homicide, and it increases the risk of suicide. Instead of charging him with a felony, the prosecutor allowed Anthony to plead guilty to a single count of misdemeanor assault. The judge lectured Anthony at the change of plea hearing. Strangulation is a very serious thing, and it's recognized that way by the legislature. That's why these types of cases can be charged as felonies. Anthony did not heed the judge's warning. On May 23, 2018, when the police arrived at the mayor's property, they found Anthony in a bedroom cradling Jennifer's body. His hands and clothes were bloody. Anthony told the police he'd been watching TV with the children in the living room when he heard the pop of a gunshot and found Jennifer dying. She had a gunshot wound on the underside of her chin, and a .22 caliber rifle lay at her feet. Kotzebue police investigator Thomas Milliet measured the weapon and noted it was 27 1/8 inches from the tip of the barrel to the tip of the trigger. He then measured Jennifer Kirk's arm and recorded its length as 26 3/18 inches. From these measurements, Kirk's family did not believe she could have shot herself with the rifle. Jennifer's family said Jennifer was not depressed and never mentioned committing suicide. Nevertheless, the Kotzebue police immediately ruled Jennifer's death a suicide, even before they had the autopsy report. The state medical examiner's office called the police 2 days after Jennifer's death and told them that Jennifer's body showed signs of strangulation. When Milliet heard the news, he confronted Anthony, and Anthony admitted to strangling Jennifer, but said he was acting in self-defense. He said Jennifer slapped him, and he held her by the neck, but didn't know how hard he was squeezing. He said he did know if she passed out from the lack of oxygen, but he swore he did not shoot her. In the end, the medical examiner agreed with the police and ruled Jennifer Kirk's death a suicide. Milliet failed to conduct a thorough investigation, and no one has ever been held responsible for Jennifer's death. Let me take a short break. I want to invite all of you to the October Christmas Book Bazaar event on Facebook. All featured books at the bazaar, including my book, Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier, are on sale for 25% off the cover price. You will earn 1 point for each book you purchase during this event and during our November and December events. When you collect 5 points, you can choose a free book from any of the featured authors. But the bazaar is much more than a book sale. You can meet the authors, participate in conversations and games, and watch for surprise opportunities to win points toward a free book. I would love to have you stop by and say hi. We can chat about the books and this podcast. It's never too early to start on your Christmas gift list, and with books available in a wide variety of genres at the Christmas Bazaar, you can find the perfect present for everyone. The October Christmas Book Bazaar event began on Facebook on October 22nd and runs until November 5th. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, or you can search in Facebook events for the October Christmas Book Bazaar. I'll see you there. Four months after the Kotzebue police found Jennifer Kirk dead on the mayor's property, 10-year-old Ashley Johnson Barr, a sweet girl with a beautiful smile, was raped, murdered, and discarded on the tundra outside of Kotzebue. Kirk's murder had received no publicity, but the news media across the country covered the search for young Ashley. Authorities and citizens searched for Ashley for several days before they discovered her body. But Alaska State Troopers had little doubt about who had abused and killed Ashley. Not long after they found Ashley's remains, troopers arrested 41-year-old Peter Wilson, and prosecutors charged him with murder, kidnapping, and sexual abuse of a minor. Two female relatives of Peter Wilson admitted that Wilson had repeatedly raped them when they were children. A cousin told a reporter from the Anchorage Daily News that Wilson raped her more than 40 times in 1996, when Wilson was 18 and she was 12. When she tried to fight him, he began choking her. Wilson's younger sister reported that she was only 3 years old when Wilson, then 12, sexually abused her and another child while he was babysitting them. Wilson later apologized to his sister for the incident. Wilson's sister and cousin regret not coming forward sooner and feel that Ashley might still be alive if they'd spoken up. Both recall telling adults at the time about Wilson's attacks, but the adults told them not to talk about the sexual abuse, so they remained quiet. During the search for young Ashley, Mayor Clement Richards Sr. stood front and center in the national spotlight. He said, "We're a small community where everyone knows everyone, so we're trying as hard as we can to find her." The Kotzebue police used every resource they had to investigate the murder of Ashley Johnson Barr. They called the Alaska State Troopers and the FBI for assistance, and they utilized DNA evidence, search warrants, and surveillance videos to gather enough evidence to arrest Peter Wilson. They solved the case quickly while the nation watched. They investigated Ashley's murder the way they should have investigated Jennifer's death. Two months after searchers found Ashley's small body on the tundra, the Kotzebue police were called to the scene of another domestic violence incident. Susanna Norton was 6 months pregnant when her boyfriend, Clement Richards Jr., kicked her in the abdomen and beat her. According to the police report, Susanna said the defendant kicked her repeatedly in the head, face, stomach, and back. Police Sergeant Norman Hughes categorized the beating in a criminal complaint filed in a state court as misdemeanor 4th-degree assault, the least serious form of assault under state law. Norton immediately flew to Anchorage, where she gave birth to a baby girl weighing only a little over 3 pounds. She named her daughter Eden. Due to her premature birth, Eden had significant medical issues and needed surgery. Susanna temporarily placed Eden with the foster family in Anchorage so that she could be close to the medical care she needed. Meanwhile, Susanna returned to Kotzebue and her abusive boyfriend. At 8:32 a.m. on March 9th, police were called to the former mayor's house, where they found the body of Susanna Norton, with a jacket draped over her head. Someone had strangled her. Her death certificate listed the cause of death as asphyxiation due to obstruction of airway and compression of neck. The medical examiner also found that Norton had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to the head, neck, and extremities. Susanna's death was listed as a homicide, but the Kotzebue police have done little to investigate it. Kotzebue Police Chief Roger Rouse said the police could not collect certain evidence related to Susanna's case because the judge had rejected a search warrant for the items. The police chief would not name the judge who had refused the warrant. The Alaska State Troopers are still investigating the murder of Susanna Norton, but after so much time, there is little hope that someone will have to answer for her death. Since the troopers do not comment on open investigations, it is impossible to know how far they have progressed. Susanna lived in the middle of Kotzebue, 1 block from the police station. Someone murdered her in a house with only a limited number of occupants, and the police had arrested one of them several times for abusing her. It would seem the investigation into her murder should be pretty straightforward. Still, Susanna's family does not believe the police even know the correct day of Susanna's death. They were called to the murder scene on March 9th, and they estimated her date of death as March 5th or 6th. But Susanna's sister said she was alive and with her on March 7th or 8th. If she died on March 5th or 6th, why didn't the Richards family call the police sooner? What went on in the ex-mayor's house after Susanna died? The ugly problem of violence against women in Alaska, and especially sexual abuse against Native women, is not new. And for it to go away, attitudes must change. These changes have to begin in the villages and with the local law enforcement and judiciary serving these villages. Women should be cherished and treated with respect, not used as punching bags. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you to my patrons for your support. Check out the show notes for more information on how you can support this podcast and unlock extra episodes by joining the Last Frontier Club. If you haven't already done it, be sure to join the Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier Facebook group and chat about the podcast. I'll see you soon for the next episode of Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier.